Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to picture a typical Friday night. Maybe you're out at a bar, maybe you're scrolling through your phone on the couch, or maybe you're just walking through a busy city center. You look around, and if you're paying attention, you might get this nagging sense that something is off.
Off how? What's the vibe you're getting?
It's like the energy has shifted. You see headlines everywhere about the male loneliness epidemic, and it's easy to roll your eyes, right? You think, okay, here we go, another article about sad guys. It sounds like an emotional problem. But looking at the stack of research we have today, I'm starting to think feelings are the least of it.
No, you're absolutely right. Calling this an emotional issue, while, true, is really underselling the scale of what is happening. We aren't just looking at a few lonely weekends. We are looking at a structural, demographic, and an economic earthquake.
It feels like a silent exit.
That is the perfect term for it, the silent exit.
Because when I started looking at the numbers, and I mean just the raw census data and demographic reports, I honestly thought there was a typo. I had to double check it.
You're talking about the Great Divergence.
Exactly. So let's set the stage here. We are looking at adults under the age of 30, specifically that bracket of men and women between 18 and 29. Now, in my head, simple biology suggests there should be roughly the same number of men and women in that bucket, right?
Give or take a margin of error, yes. It should be balanced.
So if you survey them and ask, are you single? The percentages should be roughly the same. If 50% of guys are single, about 50% of women should be single.
In a perfectly closed system, that is how the math works.
But that is not what the data shows. The data says that 63% of men in that age group identify as single. 63%. Nearly two-thirds of young men are unattached.
It is a staggering number.
But here is the kicker. In that exact same age bracket, women under 30, only 34% say they are single.
It's a gap of nearly 30 percentage points.
How is that mathematically possible? I mean, seriously. Unless we have suddenly adopted a polygamous societal structure overnight, or half the men disappeared into the Bermuda Triangle, if there are roughly the same amount of men and women, how can nearly twice as many men be single?
It's the first question everyone asks when they see this chart. It feels like the math is broken. But when you peel it back, you realize there isn't just one thing happening. There are three distinct gears turning here that explain this gap.
Okay, break them down for me, because right now the numbers just don't add up.
The first gear is simple demographics and social norms. Women date older. It's a pattern we have seen for decades. A 25-year-old woman is frequently dating a 32-year-old or 35-year-old man.
Right, so she's in the under 30 bracket, but her boyfriend is in the over 30 bracket.
Exactly. So she exits the single statistic for her age group, but she doesn't take a man from her own age group with her. She's, in effect, importing a partner from an older demographic. That leaves the 25-year-old guy alone.
Okay, that accounts for some of it, but 30%. That seems like a massive swing just based on age gaps.
Well, this leads to the second and perhaps more controversial factor. We have to look at how we define single versus, seeing someone.
The gray area, the situationship.
Precisely. We are seeing a consolidation of romantic attention. You might have a scenario, and the data backs this up, where you have a small percentage of highly desirable men at the top of the dating hierarchy. Let's say the top 10% of guys in terms of looks, status, or money.
The guys with the great jobs, the height, the charisma, the full package.
Correct. One of those men might be casually seeing three different women at the same time. He isn't committed to any of them. If you ask him, are you single? He says, yeah, absolutely. I'm playing the field. I'm not tied down.
But if you ask those three women,
they might say, well, I'm seeing a guy, or I'm talking to someone. They don't identify as single in the same way, even though they're all effectively sharing the attention of one man.
Wow. So we basically have a sharing economy of romance happening at the top tier.
To an extent, yes. It is an unequal distribution of relationship capital. And third, obviously, LGBTQ plus identification plays a role in the stats, but the primary driver is this structural mismatch. It signals that for a huge chunk of young men, maybe the bottom 50 or 60%, the door to relationships is just closed.
And that is the mission for this deep dive, because I want to be clear. We aren't here to shame men for being lonely, and we definitely aren't here to blame women for being selective.
No, blame is useless here. This isn't about individuals behaving badly. It's about a system that is shifted under our feet.
We want to unpack why this is happening. Why are men voluntarily or perhaps involuntarily removing themselves from the dating market? And later, I really want to get into the economic fallout, because apparently no honey leads to no money.
It's the provider incentive collapsing. and it's scarier than people think.
But first, we have to look at the gatekeepers. If we want to understand why young men are checking out, we have to look at the environment where they were supposed to be checking in. We have to talk about the apps.
The digital marketplace.
It really is a market, isn't it? We use that term metaphorically, the dating market, but with apps, it's literal.
It is a winner-take-all economy. And the digital architecture of these places, Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, is fundamentally skewed in a way most people don't realize.
I was looking at the user base breakdown for these apps. I always assumed it was roughly 50-50. You know, men looking for women, women looking for men. Balance.
Not even close. On platforms like Tinder, the gender breakdown is roughly 75% male and only 25% female.
Okay, stop there for a second. 3-to-1.
Imagine walking into a nightclub. There are 100 people inside. 75 of them are dudes, standing around holding drinks, looking at their phones, and there are only 25 women in the entire place.
That is not a great nightclub.
It's a sausage fest. But think about the dynamics in that room. Just by the laws of supply and demand, the women in that room immediately have all the leverage. They don't have to do anything. They are the scarce resource.
They can be hyper-selective because they have the pick of the litter.
Extremely selective. Whereas the men, they're facing extreme competition just to get a hello. They have to be the loudest, the tallest, the funniest, just to get noticed.
And this leads to that infamous 80-20 rule we see discussed online. Or I guess in this case, the data suggests it's even more extreme.
It is. There was a famous analysis of OkCupid data a few years back, and newer internal data from other apps suggest the trend holds up, where they asked women to simply rate the attractiveness of men on the site, just on looks.
And this is where it gets brutal.
They rated approximately 80% of the men as below average in attractiveness.
Wait, statistically that's impossible. Average is the middle. You can't have 80% of people be below average. That's not how a bell curve works.
In a statistics class, no. But on a dating app, yes, because women are overwhelmed by options. When you have 1,000 likes in your inbox, your baseline for what is acceptable shifts sky high.
So if you're just a regular guy, decent job, average height, nice face, good person, you aren't just average. You are statistically invisible.
You are in that bottom 80% that is fighting for scraps. You don't even register as an option.
And we have the match rates to prove it right. I saw a number that made my stomach drop, 0.6%.
That is the killer stat. For women, the average match rate, meaning they swipe right and it's a match, is decent, around 10% or higher, depending on the app. For men, it is 0.6%.
0.6.
That equates to roughly one match for every 140 swipes.
That is soul-crushing. Imagine applying for 140 jobs. You customize your resume, you write the cover letter, you hit send, and you get one callback. And that callback might just be a bot or someone promoting their OnlyFans.
Exactly. It creates a Pareto distribution of love.
Walk me through that Pareto distribution.
It's a concept from economics, usually applied to wealth. 20% of the people own 80% of the wealth. We were seeing the exact same thing in dating. You have a tiny percentage of top-tier men, the ones with the height, the status, the specific look that works on a phone screen, and they are getting the vast majority of the attention.
It's a winner-take-all economy.
It is. And honestly, I like the resume analogy you used. It's like a company where 100 people apply, but the HR algorithm only even looks at the top 3 resumes and shreds the other 97 before a human even sees them.
That is exactly what it feels like. And we have to talk about what that does to a human brain, because you cannot face that level of rejection or really that level of ignoring without psychological consequences.
No, you can't. And that brings us to the psychological toll. The research calls it dating burnout. But that sounds almost too mild. It sounds like I'm tired of working late. This is deeper.
Much deeper. When I looked at the symptom list in the study, it looked like a clinical diagnosis for depression.
It's close. The studies define this syndrome with symptoms like emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and a reduced sense of personal accomplishment. About 14% of users are showing severe symptoms that correlate with stress and a significant drop in self-esteem.
Can we talk about depersonalization for a second? Because that is a heavy word for an app where you swipe on faces.
It is heavy, but think about what the app does. It gamifies human beings. If you are swiping through hundreds of faces in a minute, you stop viewing the potential partner as a human being with feelings, a history, a voice. They become a playing card, a data point. You swipe them away.
And conversely, you feel like a data point. You feel commodified, like a can of soup on a shelf that nobody's buying.
Exactly. And the way we treat each other, the vocabulary we have developed for modern dating, is basically a glossary of pathologies. It's a landscape of avoidance.
It really is. I want to run through a few of these because I think everyone knows ghosting. That's the classic disappearing act. But breadcrumbing, that feels more sinister.
Breadcrumbing is insidious. It's when someone drops just enough small morsels of interest to keep you on the hook.
Like a random hey at 2 a.m.
Or a like on your Instagram story. Just a tiny signal to say, I'm still here. But they have absolutely no intention of committing or meeting up. They just want to keep you in their orbit as an option. It keeps the other person in a state of suspended hope.
That's just cruel. And then there's benching.
Which is exactly what it sounds like. You aren't the starter. You are on the roster, sitting on the bench, just in case the main option, the starter, falls through. You are the backup plan.
But the worst one I saw in the notes was ghost lighting.
Yes. A combination of ghosting and gaslighting.
This is next level toxic.
This is where someone ghosts you, disappears for weeks, and then pops back up. And when you ask, hey, what happened? You vanished. They pretend nothing happened. They say, what do you mean? I've just been busy. You're being crazy.
So they make you question your own reality regarding their rejection.
Exactly. Now, imagine you are a young man experiencing this. But actually, for men, the experience often isn't even this dramatic. It's not ghostlighting. It's just silence.
The void.
The void. And this leads to learned helplessness. This is a famous psychological concept. If an animal or a human repeatedly tries to do something and gets a negative result, or worse, no result, eventually they stop trying.
Even if the door opens.
Even if the door opens. They believe the outcome is out of their control.
The sources called it Tinder PTSD, the actual dread associated with just opening the app icon.
It makes rational sense. If you have a 0.6% success rate, and every interaction costs you emotional energy and dates cost financial capital, eventually the rational part of your brain says, stop touching the stove. It burns.
And when you stop touching the stove, you have to go somewhere else. Which brings us to the great checkout. Where are these men going? Because they don't just disappear.
Well, the rational withdrawal theory says, if the game is rigged, don't play. And we are seeing the global rise of a phenomenon that really started in Japan a few decades ago.
You're talking about the herbivore men.
So shokudanchi. These are men who have no interest in flesh eating, which is the Japanese metaphor for pursuing women or being aggressive in romance.
So they aren't incels. They aren't angry.
No, and that's a crucial distinction. Incels, involuntary celibates, are angry they can't get in the game. Herbivore men have looked at the game and said, no thanks, too much hassle. They prefer male friendships, hobbies, and a quiet life.
And we are seeing this mindset go global. It's not just Tokyo anymore. But here's my question. Where does that sexual and romantic energy go? Because biology hasn't changed. Young men still have drives.
It goes into the digital realm. We are seeing a massive substitution effect. The energy is being channeled into pornography and gaming.
The numbers on this were staggering. I saw that during the pandemic, traffic to adult sites spiked 24%.
And it hasn't really gone back down. Experts call these supernormal stimuli. Think about it. Video games and pornography offer a high hit of dopamine. They offer a simulated sense of achievement. You level up, you win the match, and a simulated sense of intimacy or sexual release.
And the key difference.
No risk of rejection. The video game doesn't ghost you. The video game doesn't judge your height or your income. It is a safe loop of effort and reward. Real-world dating, by comparison, feels high risk and low reward.
That is a terrifying feedback loop. Why go out and face the 0.6% odds when you can stay home and feel like a winner in Call of Duty?
Exactly. Yeah. But there's another subgroup of men who haven't given up, but they have gone down a different, perhaps darker rabbit hole. We have to talk about looks maxing.
Oh, this was fascinating and deeply disturbing. This is the idea that if the algorithm is the problem, I just need to hack my own hardware to beat it.
It is a technocratic approach to love. Young men are obsessing over sexual market value. They are analyzing their canthal tilt, the angle of their eyes, and their jaw structure.
I went down a rabbit hole on this. They are doing extreme jaw exercises, complex skincare routines, gym regimens, but then I saw something called bone smashing.
Yeah, that is the extreme end.
Please tell me that isn't what it sounds like.
It is exactly what it sounds like. Some young men are hitting their facial bones with blunt objects to create microfractures in the hopes that the bone will heal back thicker and more chiseled.
That sounds medieval. That sounds like something from a dungeon, not a dating strategy.
It is desperation. The logic is, if I just upgrade my avatar, I will pass the filter. But notice what is missing from that equation.
Personality, humor, kindness.
Emotional intelligence. It completely ignores the soft skills that actually sustain a relationship. It treats dating strictly as a visual algorithm to be hacked. If I have the jawline, I get the girl.
So we have men checking out into gaming or obsessing over their jawlines to the point of self-harm. But this doesn't just stay in the bedroom or the gym. This is bleeding into the economy. And this was the part of the deep dive that really surprised me, the link between no honey and no money.
This is the economic feedback loop. And if you are an economist, this is the part that keeps you up at night.
Because we aren't just seeing men drop out of dating, we're seeing them drop out of work.
Correct. We have seen a steady decline in labor force participation for prime-age men. That's men aged 25 to 54.
This used to be the engine of the economy, the backbone.
In the 1950s, 98% of men in that age bracket were working. Today, it's down to about 89%. That might not sound like a huge drop, but that represents millions of men missing from the workforce. And there's a strong correlation between this drop and the decline in dating and marriage.
Because, and this might sound old-fashioned, but historically, why did men grind at boring, difficult jobs?
To provide. The provider incentive has been the primary motivator for male labor for centuries. You endure the coal mine or the corporate cubicle or the long trucking shifts because you have a wife and children relying on you. Your status and your identity were tied to that provision.
So let's play this out. If the dating market is closed to you, if you look at your future and say, I'm probably never going to have a wife or kids,
Then the incentive evaporates. Why work 60 hours a week? Why strive for that promotion? Why break your back? If it is just you, you can survive on a lot less. You can work a gig job, live a simpler life.
it becomes a vicious cycle.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Men earn less because they are less motivated. Because they earn less, they become even less attractive candidates on the dating market. Because women, generally, still value financial stability, so they withdraw further from dating, which makes them care less about work. Rinse and repeat.
And living arrangements play into this too. We are seeing more young men living with their parents well into their late 20s and 30s.
It provides a feasible exit. If you aren't supporting a family and you can live at home, you don't need to participate in the rat race. It is a rational economic decision for the individual, but it spells trouble for the macroeconomy.
Okay, we have talked a lot about the male experience, but we have to look at the other side of the equation. What is happening with women? Because they aren't just sitting around waiting for these guys to get it together.
No, absolutely not. We can't talk about male withdrawal without talking about female independence. The reality is, women have decentered men.
He-centered men. Unpack that.
Heterosexual partnership is no longer a requirement for a woman's financial survival or social standing. 50 years ago, a woman often needed a husband to have a credit card, a mortgage, a place in society. That is gone.
Thank goodness.
Absolutely. But it means the bar is higher. A man has to add value to her life because she's doing fine on her own.
I've seen the cat lady trope basically being reclaimed as a badge of honor on social media.
It is. Being single is increasingly seen as cooler and safer than settling for a man who doesn't add value. And this is where the soft launch comes in. Have you noticed how women post about their relationships now?
Yeah, it's mysterious. It's an elbow in the frame, a watch on a wrist.
Right. Even when women do get into relationships, there's a trend of hiding it or revealing it very slowly.
Why hide it? If you're happy, why not shout from the rooftops?
Fear of embarrassment. There is a growing perception that men are a liability. If you post your boyfriend and that he cheats or says something embarrassing or it turns out to be cringe, it reflects on you.
That is wild.
Yeah.
So having a boyfriend isn't the status symbol it used to be. Sometimes it's seen as a risk.
Exactly. So you have women looking for emotionally intelligent, financially stable partners who can add to their lives. And you have men struggling with loneliness, economic precarity, and stunted social skills because they've been isolated in digital echo chambers.
It is a massive mismatch. The puzzle pieces aren't fitting together anymore.
They are from two different puzzles.
So where does this leave us? If we look at the crystal ball. Part 6. The future. This sounds like it leads to a demographic winter.
That is the term demographers use. And this is why governments are starting to panic. This isn't just about lonely Friday nights. This is about the future of the species, or at least the future of national economies.
Falling marriage rates equal falling birth rates.
Almost always. You need a replacement rate of 2.1 children per woman to keep a population stable. Most developed nations are falling well below that. South Korea is down to 0.7.
And if you don't hit that number, the population shrinks.
And it ages. By 2050, we are looking at a crisis with the support ratio.
Which is what?
The ratio of workers to retirees. Who is going to pay for the pensions and health care of the elderly? If you have a massive generation of older people and a tiny generation of workers because men and women stopped pairing off in the 2020s, The economic math collapses. The pyramid turns upside down.
That is grim. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel? Are we seeing a correction, or are we just doomed to swipe until the batteries die?
There are some faint signals of a correction. We are seeing trends like slow dating. People are getting burned out on the burning out. They're deleting the apps and trying to be more intentional.
I've heard of loud looking, too.
Yes, which is basically radical transparency. Instead of playing games, you say exactly what you want up front. I want a relationship, I want kids, scaring away the people who aren't serious immediately.
But the one that gives me the most hope is the surge in third spaces.
We're clubs.
Run clubs are everywhere. Every city I go to, there's a massive run club on Wednesday nights.
It's not just about running, it's about being offline. We are seeing a surge in hobby groups, board game nights, pottery classes. People are realizing that the algorithm is a bad matchmaker. They want to bypass the digital judgment and meet people in the wild.
Where personality can actually shine through.
Yeah.
Where you aren't just a picture of a jawline.
Exactly. It's a move toward authenticity. But we have to be realistic. These are small trends against a massive tidal wave of digital isolation.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what is the final takeaway? Because we started with that shocking stat, 63% of young men are single.
The takeaway is that we need to stop viewing this as a personal failure of young men. They aren't just giving up because they are lazy or because they don't like women. They are responding rationally to an environment, digital and economic, that feels hostile to them.
If the slot machine never pays out, you stop pulling the lever.
Exactly. To fix the loneliness epidemic, we can't just tell men to touch grass or man up. That's useless advice. We have to acknowledge that the mechanisms of connection, specifically the apps, are fundamentally broken for the majority of the male population. And economically, the path to being a provider is steeper than ever.
It really makes you think. We have built all this technology to connect us, but it seems like it's engineered a massive disconnect.
It is optimized for engagement, for screen time, for ad revenue. It was never optimized for love.
Here's a provocative thought to leave you with today. If the traditional provider role is dead economically and culturally, and the digital dating market treats 80% of men as invisible, what does the next version of masculinity actually look like?
That is the million-dollar question. If you aren't a provider and you aren't a Chad, who are you?
Are we witnessing the end of dating as we know it, or just a painful reboot?
I hope it's a reboot, but the system is currently crashing.
Something to mull over the next time you pick up your phone to swipe. Think about the human behind the profile.
And maybe, just maybe, take a risk and say hello to someone in real life.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.